I spilled my tea
on the inside of my legs. Oh man. Hello. Welcome to my weird ass hair. I tried to cut my bangs again. I don't know how I did it the first time, but it did not go well for me this time. What you can't see over here is like a huge section of hair that's like really short that I've covered up with longer pieces. Skills. I'm back. Hey, I'm gonna scoot a little bit. Welcome again to another tea in a chat. I'm using the same mug, I'm pretty sure. I didn't mean to do that. Today I have a story, and but you could tell by the title, but I'm gonna tell you about my experiences with stalking and harassment. Yeah, fun times. Couple of things I just want to say before we get started. This is a funny story. I know it sounds depressing and it was obviously not super fun at the time, but this is comedy. If you're watching this because you've experienced something similar, I'm not trying to make light of that sort of experience. One of the ways that I learned to cope with it at the time was to point out everything that this person did that was dumb. And let me tell you, he was like the dumbest stalker I have probably ever heard of. Like, this guy did not think things through. Everyone copes with this sort of stuff in your own way. I'm not trying to make light of your experiences. And if you do want to talk about it, you know how to find me. Another thing, this is part one of how we look at stalking and romance tropes in the media. I'm not going to talk about that in this video, but I did want to put this out as an introduction so you know my experiences with this sort of thing and kind of where some of my interests came from. So here we go.
The year was...
I'm not going to tell you. Although if you've watched other videos on my channel, you could probably figure out what year it was. I was a freshman in high school and I had only just that year gotten a Facebook. Now, I was a super sheltered kid. I wasn't allowed like AOL Messenger. I wasn't allowed MySpace. I had to beg my parents to let me get an email. So I finally had a Facebook. One day, I got a friend request from a name I recognized but didn't really know. And everyone remembers that time when you first get your first social media where anytime someone friend requests you, you accept them. I knew the name, but I was a super shy and introverted kid, so I just figured it was a kid from my school that I just never spoke to because I didn't speak to anyone. Accepted his friend request, didn't really think anything of it. It happened a lot. And then this guy actually sends me a chat, and I was like, oh, I enjoy chats. So he said, hey, I was in your algebra class, and that tracked. He mentioned that he knew my friend. We were just sort of chatting, mentioned that friends and I should, you know, get together at some time. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like something friends do. And so I gave him my number so we could plan something. That was the end of that. I didn't hear from him for a while. I think he texted me once or twice saying, hey. But then a couple weeks later, he messaged me on Facebook again. We talked probably 2 or 3 times on Facebook before this. I don't even know if it was that many. And he sent me just a heart. I was like, okay. I must have sent him like question marks or whatever. And he messaged me back, I like your shape. And I was like, that's weird. Sent him back like question marks. And he's like, I like your body. I was like, oh yeah, I get that. Thank you. So then this guy asks me a question that I won't say. I don't mind telling this in person, but it's probably not appropriate to say on YouTube. And asked me if I participated in a particular, fairly mundane, but act of the sexual variety. When I said to him, excuse me, he proceeded to send me a message explaining what that sexual act was in pretty graphic detail and was like, yeah, dude, I know what it means. Please don't talk to me again. And I immediately deleted him off of Facebook. Back in the early days of Facebook, the messaging function and the chat were 2 separate things. Messages were more like emails. You can send anyone a message, but the chat, you could only talk to your friends. He sent me a message, like, so one of the email messages saying, why did you delete me? Add me back. And I just said something like, delete my number. And after going back and forth with him saying, add me back, and I said, delete my number, he finally said, look, I will delete your number when you add me back on Facebook. Well, obviously I wasn't about to do that, so this guy kept my number. He started texting me more and more often. Me being a pretty naive 14-year-old kept texting him back. Stop, leave me alone, please don't do this.
Obviously,
I shouldn't have engaged. But I was 14 and I didn't really understand that at the time. And this went on for quite a while. And this one message I remember the most was when he texted me one day while I was waiting for the bus, and he said, oh, so I know who you are now. And I was very confused because he saw my pictures on Facebook and he said, you're the one in the green shirt. I had no idea what this guy looked like. His Facebook didn't have pictures of his face. I had no idea where this guy was. He could see me and I couldn't see him. That was one of the scariest experiences of my 14-year-old life. Never told my parents. I finally did tell my parents when a friend of my sister's, who had become a friend of mine through the middle school play, messaged me on Facebook one day saying, do you know this person? This girl was in 8th grade. I know I was only a year older than she was, but the fact that he was trying to, you know, text middle school girls made me very uncomfortable. Oh my god, this has been out this whole time. No one told me. That's embarrassing. I finally told my parents. They asked me why I'd never told them before, and I told them that that was because I was the one that gave him my number, so I just assumed it was my fault. The messages went on for a little while longer. Another day, he did the same thing. He texted me and said, OMG, I didn't know you were in band too. This is another instance where he knew where I was. He knew exactly who I was, and I was in band, so I'm dressed like every other person around. He's dressed like every other person around me. I had no idea what he looked like. I had no idea who he was, and he could point me out of a crowd like 100 people wearing the same outfit. That really scared me, and so I finally told one of my friends who recognized his name and said, I think he rides my bus. We found him in the school yearbook, and so this is kind of my terrible 14-year-old mind, but this guy was not attractive at all. And for some reason that made me feel better. Maybe it was just because now I knew who he was. Of course, they put him in the row behind me. A little bit scary, but I knew who he was. I could keep an eye on him, and that was better. I heard from him sporadically over the course of the next month, and then the band went on a trip to Mackinac Island. Basically completely forgot about him until I was on the bus on the way home from Mackinac, and I was called up to the front of the bus by my band teacher, held up a phone and said, is this your number? And I didn't think anything of it. Our band directors keep our numbers in case something happens, so I just sort of figured he realized because I spoke to no one, he didn't have mine. And then he said, is a friend of yours? I just sort of sat there and went, no, he is not. Everything was just suddenly okay. And my band director said, has he been texting you? Yes. Do you want him to? No. Have you asked him to stop? Yes. Has he? No. Great. And I just remember running to the back of the bus yelling, got caught at my friends, and the four of us, we just started like celebrating. That was it. For a while. Later on that summer, I actually found out that I was not the only person he had been harassing. He was messaging several girls in the band, and it was actually one of the girls' friends finally got fed up and told the band director, and that's how he got caught. My sister calls me in the room the next January, and she says, hey Amelia, can you come look at this? Is this him? I started reading these messages, and this guy, I swear to God, like at the time I was pissed, but like think about it. This is actual messages that he sent my sister. He said, I know your sister. My sister says, oh really? He says, yeah, but she knows me under a different name. So Quinn says, okay, what name? He says, oh, I can't tell you because then she'll tell you not to talk to me. Could have said nothing, bro. She never would have known. So I told her, yes, it's him. For a while, I told her what to say, and then eventually she got up and just said, you do it, and she left the room. And I ended up basically just screaming at him because she said, look, I know who you are. How dare you? After like how you made me feel. And then eventually he says something to the effect of like, look, you don't need to yell at me. I mean, I'm sorry I sexually harassed your sister, but you don't need to yell at me. And that just really made me laugh. Pissed off laughing, obviously, but like still laughing. Finally, he figures out that I'm not Quinn, and he actually thinks it's one of my friends who hates him with a passion. But I said, no, this is the sister you sexually harassed. To which he started blubbering, and I don't even know why he even attempted to contact my sister if he knew I hated him. Was trying to apologize to me. In his words, it was because all of his friends were having sex and he wasn't. And so he thought that if he messaged as many girls as possible, one of them was bound to have sex with him. Good plan. So after a few more messages, he threatened suicide. My mom convinced me that the next day I should go to the guidance counselor's office. I did. My boyfriend came with me. I stayed with this woman all of the first class and into the next class. At first, they didn't seem like they were taking it seriously, but they took it seriously, you know, when I told them threatened suicide. They sent me to the assistant principal's office, and he had me fill out a witness statement. Then they sent me to, my high school was set in two buildings kind of next to each other, so students would walk between the buildings to go to different classes. In addition to security officers, it had its own police officer. So they sent me to the police officer, sent me back to my next class. So it was the middle of January, it was really cold. We'd had a snow day the day before, and I walk all the way to the other building where I'm supposed to be taking a physics test. I finished one question before the South Building security guard came to pull me out of class. He took me down to the South Building security office where I was met with one of the assistant principals and my sister. So we both gave our side of the story. Then they sent me on our way to the third class. I didn't make it. So I was actually driven by a security guard back to the other building's police office, where I was met by the North Building police officer, the South Building police officer, a South Building assistant principal, and this kid's parole officer. Turned out when he got caught the first time for harassment, basically placed him on probation. He wasn't allowed to use technology, he wasn't allowed to use his phone, and he wasn't allowed to use Facebook. So in contacting my sister, he'd actually violated his parole.
So I basically had to tell
The whole story again. They had me print out the messages another time, and they actually had me access his new Facebook account's friends list. Not only was his entire friends list exclusively girls, one of those girls was a 7th grader I had known since she was 8 years old. It was just appalling. I found out at the end of the day that one of my friends had seen him escorted out of the building by the police. So I legitimately got a guy arrested. Don't mess with me. And this is me thinking it's over. That parade, the one that he pointed me out in the year before, I remember him following the band along and getting really scared because I was like, does he know it was me? Like, is he here for me? He wasn't. He wasn't. Fast forward a year later, it's Christmas, my junior year. I get a text from a number I don't recognize saying Merry Christmas. So I was like, Merry Christmas, who's this? And he said, oh, it's, and I was like, why are you texting me? Like, this is ridiculous, leave me alone. He said, I'm trying to apologize and I want to tell you what happened. They didn't tell me he turned me in, but they did show me the messages, so. Real anonymous. Thanks, school. So he knew it was me that turned him in the entire time. Awesome. It turned out he'd been expelled from school, sentenced to 3 months in juvie, and then graduated early from an alternative high school. I realized that this is a number I didn't recognize. He had had his phone privileges taken away. In order for him to know to text me, he would have had to have kept my number somewhere for 2 years. That was not what I wanted in my head. That was really not fun. Finally, I got him to shut up, told him to leave me alone, never contact me again. Blocked his number. 2 months later, it's still not over. I got a message from his Facebook, like a new Facebook or something like that, where he said, hey, it's me. I'm not trying to talk to you. I've been talking to this girl and she wants to talk to you about what happened between us. Will you talk to her for me? And I was like, you sent a girl you want to like you to me to explain that you've been stalking and harassing several girls as young as 12 years old for several years. That's what you want me to do? Okay, sure. I'll do that. I'm happy to do that for you. She messages me and she says, hey, I'm the girl I told you about. He wants me to know what happened between you. I don't know much about it, but he said something like you guys fought and threatened you with a knife or something. And I was like, wait, what? First of all, that's what he told you? Something like way more violent than what actually happened? That's weird. Second, I've never spoken to this guy in person. So he lied to you and sent you to me. What did he expect? That I was gonna confirm this lie? What did you honestly expect would happen? So I told her exactly what happened. She went, well, that's not great, and stopped talking to him. And so I finally blocked him. I have never heard from him since. I have no idea what's going on. I haven't heard anything about him. I haven't seen him. I haven't gotten a message from him. He hasn't tried to contact me in more than 7 years. That's good. Yeah, this guy was like really not smart. He like just really wanted to tell people how weird and creepy he was, I guess. That's my story. I finished my tea already. That's a much longer story than I always expect it to be. Like I said, that wasn't meant to be some like sob story. This is how I got PTSD sort of thing. It's not, but obviously it is something that happened, and it's a story I actually kind of like telling because A, telling people I sent a guy to jail, fun conversation starter, and B, it happened and it happens. So this is a thing, happens to 14-year-old girls. That's way less fun to tell when you don't have people laughing at his stupidity with you, because like it's so stupid. God, like so stupid. Once again, this is part 1 of 3 videos where I talk about stalking in the media. Stick around for those over the next 2 weeks because it's a lot. We have a lot to talk about. I'm not really sure how to end a story like that. Thank you for listening.
Comment below.
If you want to talk about anything or you have similar experiences or you just want to talk about how stupid this dude is, leave me a comment down below. All my social media will be in the description. I will also leave resources for people, at least in the US and the UK, places you can go if you are experiencing something like this. This is not even close to the worst of it that even like my friends and I have gotten, but those aren't my stories to tell. This is my story to tell. Use that if you need it. Stay safe, stay happy. See you next week. Bye.